Hello, hello. Now you get a double feature. Today is Sunday, which means it's a Sunday Superversive live stream. And today I've got Douglas Ernst with me talking about his new comic that he's crowdfunding at this very second by the name of Soulfinder, Demon's Match. Douglas, how are you doing today?
Hi, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, all this partisanship, we still need to work together, get everything all promoted and shared, and all this stuff, because that's how we win. Because we can't yet rush through as the Hussars once did and grind their bones to dust.
There you go.
But someday. Anyway, if only I knew how to ride a horse. So the comic book here is called Soulfinder, Demons Match. Let's see here the story. People have wondered for ages, why do bad things happen to good people? This is exactly what Father Patrick Redder, a Catholic priest who was wounded in combat during his use, is asked during the start of Soulfinder, Demon's Match. And it is a question he must grapple with after he becomes involved in a series of supernatural events. And it goes on. He's the parish priest of a small, quiet town in Steepleton, Maryland, assigned to the tiny locale despite his expertise in demonology. But small town locations are the perfect place for these things to grow and fester. In the occult, Redder is often called upon by county authorities to advise on matters with religious significance. Things don't stay quiet for long, as a series of related deaths imply that a great evil has been residing in Steepleton, waiting to arise. That's as good a premise as I've ever heard. Uh, you are the writer, correct?
Correct. Yeah, it's myself, artist Timothy Lim, and then we have two covers by Dave Dorman, which is kind of surreal because I grew up sort of loving his artwork on all the Star Wars stuff, and
Oh,
then
is he? Oh, that's good stuff.
yeah, and then Matt Weldon has done actually three additional pieces for us. That'll be in the bonus section.
Outstanding. I do love the sort of work that you can do with covers. I know Brian Silverback's a fellow comic creator. In your thing, I create no comics. I tried once and it was weird. Uh, he does a lot of alternate cover work and he just does a lot of good work. Um, but thinking about those Star Wars covers, oh, I remember those. Those were fantastic. They really spent a lot of money on it, and it shows. Uh, let's see here. So you've been working with Timothy Lynn. Why don't you, in your own words, talk about how you get started on this comic book journey, and so where you are right now?
Sure, no problem. Roughly a decade ago, I started blogging on basically the intersection of popular culture and politics and the importance of culture, Western civilization, all that kind of stuff. And I pretty much just concentrated on when I did comic book reviews on The Amazing Spider Man, but then I slowly started to cover unprofessionalism in the industry, uh,
Mm.
uh, the sort of like rabid, just say left wing politics of some of the creators that were insulting longtime customers like myself who've been reading comics since I literally learned how to read on comics. So I was blogging for many years, but then at some point in time, I wanted to reach more people. I jumped over to YouTube, and that's where this sort of network of individuals that are all just wanted kind of a return to the classic heroes journey. They wanted to return to professionalism in the industry. They were sick of being alienated by professionals who called them all sorts of name your insult. I've been called it before. And so along the lines, that's where I met Timothy Lim. And I was talking to him about what would eventually become Soulfinder. He had a very similar idea when he was a kid. There was a G.I. Joe contest, and he wanted to come up with some sort of G.I. Joe chaplain that would be the counterweight to some sort of black magic Cobra-ish figure. And I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe we should get together because I have this book that is essentially combat veterans turned exorcists. So it seems like a good match for us. And it sort of went from there. Tim introduced me to Dave Dorman, and Tim also introduced me to Brett R. Smith, who was our colorist.
Outstanding. I do like those type of stories, though. I did have an imagine of him like with a giant cross in one hand and a Bible in the other, ripped arm sleeves ripped off, giant biceps, and it's like I don't know. I'll probably think of something funny once this stream's over, but just sort of beating it like it's like I'm gonna put the holiness into you, and then beating this demon possessed snake to death with the Bible, because that's how it should go. Uh, but I think you have a much more subtle story here. So I've read out what you've got on your GoFundMe. How about you tell us in your own words about this thing?
Sure. So this particular story started. Well, I guess I'm rewinding a little bit here. So
That's
I
fine.
got sick of the comic book industry where heroes were battling heroes, battling heroes. It was like the villains were just nowhere to almost be found. You couldn't tell the difference between the two. So I wanted to have good versus evil, and so that's where I kind of started out with. I was like, okay, I want a clear delineation between the two. So you can't go wrong with having demons from hell. That there's no mistake that they're evil. And then I wanted to
Mhm.
have an exorcist who was actually a Catholic priest, because a lot of times it's just either some random dude, or it might be another demon, or it's just whatever, but it's not usually a Catholic priest. So I was like, okay, so I want to actually have a priest. Then he's got the military background, and this guy has a functioning moral compass. It's not going to be some, in the last page, I reveal that the priest is actually this like horrible, rotten person. It's like, no, he's actually like a good guy. He's got his baggage that comes. He
Mhm.
was injured on the battlefield. Obviously, the very first page is basically the end of his military career. His giant explosion that lights half of his body on fire, and he loses. He's like a partial amputee below the knee on his left leg. So he's physically wounded by being on the battlefield. So then he gets out, transitions into the priesthood, and along the lines, he becomes an exorcist. But then he gets in over his head with this particular cult, is cult of Blackfire. The main demon is called Blackfire, although we usually refer to him by his Greek name. And so once he gets in over his head, he's approached by another priest who is actually a Soulfinder, and that's where there's an attempt at a recruitment there, but he's not sure if he wants to get involved in this. And it's sort of this particular tale. It's self-contained. It's 56 pages. It's
Mhm.
basically tells his journey into like accepting his vocation, which will be to be a soul finder.
Absolutely. And I put up the image, which is pretty intense here, uh, of where the explosion describes burning his arm and taking his leg. Um, which oftentimes people would use as a start of darkness. A lot of times people equate having flaws, like a hero who's a little bit angry or um, a bit greedy or something like that. They either turn them into comedy, like you have the thief who's always stealing things. So he kisses the ring finger and his teeth come away with the ring jewel or whatever, or they turn it into like, whoa, well, just because he's a little angry or something like that, he must be an evil man. And it's like, no, like the whole purpose of having developed characters develop flaws isn't to reveal some sort of evilness within their heart,
Right.
but is to show their struggle as characters and give them a character arc if they still need to overcome a certain portion of it. If it's depression, if it's being foolhardy, the task of the good writer isn't to reveal that they were secretly evil all along, but to bring them higher than they were before. This is a channel, Superversive SF. To supervert a character is to not reveal them as evil, but reveal them to be good all along. And I love every sentence that you've said. And I'll probably next paycheck, pick up the $15 copy.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, the actually the first page, so it'll be lettered once Brett's all done with the color work or whatever. But the first page, essentially, there's a panel, and that's a flashback, and a woman is asking, why do bad things happen to good people? So I didn't want to have a book that was preachy.
Hmm.
It's informed by my faith, but it's not trying to beat people over the head with some sort of religious cudgel saying like you should be Catholic, and if you're not, you're a bad person. It's really, I wanted to explore these sort of universal questions. It's like, okay, well, I have a priest, and
Hmm.
I know that I'm going to have readers that are either atheist or agnostic or whatever, and so I wanted to cover a question that they would say like, okay, well, why do little kids get cancer? Why did my mom or dad get brain cancer or whatever the heck it is? Why do little kids get leukemia and all these sorts of things? And so I wanted to have a character who, yeah, he knows very much about bad things happening to good people, whether it's his comrades on the battlefield or whatever, or people that he interacts with through the being a priest or whatever. And so the message at the end of the day, or one of them that is explored, is that there's virtue to be found in carrying your crosses with grace and dignity. We all have crosses to bear, but bearing them in a way, like there is virtue to be found in bearing them with dignity, like I said.
I John Delarose gave me an opportunity here. He says you should be a Catholic, and if you're not, you're a bad person, though. And this, John, this is how the Reformation Wars got started. Like it's different than what it was, but it's just the damage is kind of done. Also, John. John, do I have to bring up the time when I got to a Catholic church and you didn't? I'm never going to get tired of it. Uh, but that would be mean of me to mention it in any detail. Anyway, no, definitely. And John Delarose does a lot of good work with comics as well. Be sure to check out his stuff in his YouTube channel. Great guy, great guy. So with to me, as weird as to say, I'm a good Protestant boy. Uh, the problem of evil has never really caused me a pause, but I've noticed that with a lot of people, it causes them trouble.
Right.
Mainly because they can't handle the whole like holy God, loving God, powerful God Trinity. Not that I'm saying that it is a Trinity as in the Trinity, like as in like a triangle where it's like they can't rectify it. When to me, it's always been like God is holy, therefore we can't approach him. God loves us, so he sent Jesus Christ. God's all powerful, so he rose Jesus Christ from the dead. And that's sort of the Christian hope. Um, that you know But when it comes to the problem of the bad things, God isn't going to come down and say, "I will prevent every evil that will ever befall you." He didn't even stop Adam and Eve from talking to the snake. Um, he's not going to interfere with our free will. If we're talking about those personal interactions, now earthquakes. Let's be real, California deserves it. Uh, and that's me being funny, but that's also just because of the fallen world. And it sounds like you understand that very well yourself.
Yeah, it's one of these things where, and that's why I didn't want to beat people over the head. It's like you were mentioning, a lot of these messages are more subtle in nature. And so I wanted to craft a story where if somebody just wants to see priests battling giant king cobra demons or whatever, when they take that particular form, they're going to
Hmm.
get that out of it. If they want to keep drilling down deeper into the religious themes, if they want to psychoanalyze me, and they want to say, "Oh, it looks like Doug's got daddy issues," or so, whatever the heck they want to do, they'll be able to hopefully get some sort of enjoyment out of it. And if they want to explore the Catholic Church more after having read this, then that would be, in my mind, being a Catholic, and Tim's actually Catholic as well, that would
Hmm.
be an added bonus. But in no way am I trying to say like shoving them through the door of the local church or cathedral or whatever.
Hmm. Oh, and don't get me wrong. I uh, enjoy a lot of Catholic things. The only reason I am not Catholic is because there are particular issues that stick in my craw that Catholics seem to put more weight than I feel like they should on it. Not that this is going to be a theology stream, though I should do a stream where I invite every Catholic in the land to come take a hit at shot at the champ. Um, Though Bradford Bradford Walker is pretty funny here. And before our Orthodox Chads coming in and talking smack on Prots and Catholics. And you're right, I am bullied every day by Orthodox people in my YouTube channel commentaries and in my Facebook messages, talking about how they're the true church and how everything's so beautiful and wonderful. And I'm like, you're right, but I don't have the moral courage and fiber to be an Orthodox. I'm just a Protestant from a Protestant family. I don't want to get a copyright strike. Anyway, and it's a lot of beauty and grace and stuff like that can come from Catholic iconography. It's like that Warhammer 40K stuff where they stick the Emperor's words onto their armor. When they go into battle against the Xeno scum. There's nothing intrinsically wrong with it until it goes too far. And I can already see with a lot of this stuff, not with the image I'm putting up. I'm going to change that up for everyone. That you've Ooh, I got a little snake being burned by a crucifix. This is what I like. I'm going to put that up there for everyone. That this stuff, like, we can't shy away from it. Even being a Protestant, I don't shy away from the fact that, you know, there is power in it.
Yeah, and that's where again I'm hoping anybody that's read Marvel or DC these days knows that they totally lost the plot. They've derailed. They don't tell stories anymore where it's good versus evil. It's basically people that are, I don't know, it's like some sort of Food Network meets Seinfeld meets I don't know, the Hulk or whatever. And they just talk about inane, stupid stuff all the time. It
Yeah.
goes nowhere. And they use it as propaganda. And I wanted to get back to these sort of images and ideas that are, I don't know, the stories that people have told for thousands of years to try and impart sort of valuable messages and to the culture, and
Hmm.
but not in a ham-fisted bizarre way.
Oh yeah. y- no, like, it's one of those things where you're reading a comic and it's boring, and then they start talking about personal problems or whatever. The social justice are saying, now pause. Marvel is coming to the big screen. Get ready from stars to fall with a massive thud. Yes, absolutely. I don't know where you stand on this, Douglas, but I can count the movies I want to see on one hand.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not too thrilled about the future of the MCU, especially after last night.
what happened last night?
They announced at San Diego Comic-Con, they announced the next phase 4 or whatever, and so they're going to have
Ah,
Natalie Portman's going to be Thor moving forward, I guess.
oh,
And they just their lineup just looks, it's pretty embarrassing in general. So, but the female Thor, Natalie Portman. I mean, Natalie Portman has said in the past that she'd like basically doesn't like superhero movies and doesn't
yep.
doesn't want anything to do with them. You could tell she
Where
didn't
have
have any
we heard that
chemistry.
before? Oh, it's Rian Johnson's Twitter feed. Any,
Yeah, so it's like they're putting this actress in who you could tell that she hates superhero movies and
yep,
had no chemistry with Chris Hemsworth, but she's
nope,
going to be Thor now, and you're just like, oh, all the worst comics over the past 5 to 10 years, they're now going to be on the big screen.
yep. And I'll give a shout out to John Del Raz. He sacrificed himself on the altar and said that Thor is not a woman, and he was banned for it from a group. John, rest
Yeah,
in
that's
peace.
there's going to be a lot of that move. It's like they set it up where if you dare say that Thor is not a woman, you're a bad person.
And Bradford continues, we're also getting Ironheart and the rest of the SJW takes. And it's like, all right. I was kind of excited for Thor when I saw the just the name of it, Love and Thunder, but then it's like, oh, it's female Thor. Thank you
Right.
for telling me. And it's like, not so excited as I was a second ago. Um, but eh, it's a sign of the times. Hopefully, it's the hill that Disney dies on. Not all of Disney. All of Disney won't. I don't know. They might suffer such losses. But honestly, I kind of see us going towards a thing where like the field gets shuffled. And even though I'm not exactly some sort of like mastermind genius, comic book villain, wheeler and dealer, though my name is Wheeler, um, it's it's a field rife for opportunity as things go on. And with comics like these, I'm not going to lie, I don't like most comic art, but I find this more than tolerable, especially because you've got like actual proper emotions in your art, which to me is just the creme de la creme. If you can pull it off right, Western media doesn't do it as often as I want it to.
Yeah,
Like
getting
this
Tim
picture
on
right here. Excuse me. Go for it.
no, getting Tim on board was great because there's a couple instances where he gets the emotion of the scene kind of like he took what was in my head and it was like he somehow hacked into my brain or something like that and was
Hmm.
able to put it onto the page. And so yeah, it's definitely a blessing to be able to have Tim on board as the artist.
Oh yeah. So, in working on this comic, what sort of processes did you guys go through?
So there was it's weird because Tim and I we both have full-time jobs. So I work for a newspaper. Tim's a an ear doctor. And so this is we're basically doing this like part-time and that extended the whole process out quite a bit. So when I initially broached the idea with him, it was like, okay, I'm serious about this. I could get you a script, but it's going to be a few months because I'm doing the YouTube channel. I blog
Hmm.
sometimes. I got work going on and family responsibilities, so I will try and write this whenever I can. And then I did it slowly, like on the weekends, randomly over the course of like a few months. And then I met up with Tim last October. He was down in Orlando, Florida with his longtime collaborator, Mark Pellegrini. And so we kind of used it as an excuse for a business slash personal thing going around Disney World, but also I gave him the script, and then Mark Pellegrini looked it over. Tim looked it over. I gave it to two other guys that I trusted, and everybody came back with feedback and said, "Okay, I think that you could build on this a little bit more here. I would just want a little bit more meat on this. And what do you think about this idea?" And so Mark and Tim were actually pretty instrumental in saying like, just building out the world a little more or building on what I already had there. Um,
Hmm.
and so they're like, okay, so write that. You can get it back to us. So I basically did some revisions or whatever, got it back. They're like, cool, this is good. They were doing a project at the time. I think they were doing Trump Space Force or finishing up or
Yeah.
one of those, one of their books. Tim basically was finishing up with that and mailing everything out and doing all the logistics. And then as soon as he was done with that, he started in with Soulfinder. And Brett, I had contacted him months in advance as well, and was just like, all right, so just leaves a window open next year so you can color this, and I'll make sure that you get paid appropriately given your talents. He's a super talented guy. And so it all kind of worked out, even with Dave Dorman. I think we got him on board like basically 7 months in advance. But the key was just having people know that I was serious about the project and then giving them a lot of leeway in turn, in terms of getting it done. Because like I
Mm.
said, Tim's got a full-time job, and after he gets off at night, then he just starts drawing for like 8 hours or whatever the heck it is. And then Tim, as I could see that you have Matt Weldon's art up. Tim's good friends with Matt Weldon, and then he was I think they were talking over lunch or something along those lines. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I would like to take a shot at that." So he started doing some original artwork, and I loved it. And I was like, "Dude, anytime you want to do artwork, I'll just turn it over, and I will pay you whatever the heck you want for it." And so he's done 3 pieces for us that I loved all of them.
Oh yeah. Like this one right here is I think it's the best of them. Like it could serve as a comic book cover on its own. Just absolutely fantastic. The proportions are right. The perspective is right. The sort of how do I want to put it? The JoJo pose, not really JoJo.
Right.
The pose is right. I'm a big fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and even though I can't really describe it every time it happens, all characters are JoJo posing at all times. Um, it's just looks like a fantastic piece of work. Um, work especially so working out of curiosity. This is sort of a personal interest that might be of interest of others. As I tell everyone, I kind of do things for me, and I would like to share it and for other people's enjoyments, if perhaps they do enjoyment. When I'm working over such long time frames, you said it took you over like over a year. Was that right?
Let's see. I started writing around March last year, March, April, May, June, July. Yeah, it basically took from like March last year until October. And there would be so it's weird. So there would be weekends where I didn't get around to it because I was doing YouTube videos or whatever.
Hmm.
And so it was just I would whenever I could on like a Saturday or Sunday, I would just try and knock some stuff out, or that also includes research. So I wanted to make sure that I actually knew a thing or two about exorcisms. And I mean, I did initially, but there was multiple books that I started reading to make sure that I knew what I was talking about. And we wanted to make sure I didn't want to be accused of being a heretic. so so that's where a lot of the research came in reading and all that kind of stuff, because in Marvel comics these days in particular, I'm a Marvel guy, you'll have these writers and they'll be writing, say, Tony Stark, and they don't know business 101. And it's like, okay, well, he's a billionaire, he's a CEO of his own corporation, but it's obvious you have never studied business, not even like just read a Tony Robbins book or something along those
Right.
lines to just get into the mind of a CEO. And I wanted to make sure I took that sort of criticism off the table. People will be like, okay, this guy knows a thing or two about exorcisms.
Oh, good. It's and it's like it'll show. Um, like you can tell when an author knows nothing about the hard sci-fi they're writing. So it's like if it was soft sci-fi, where it's more about the fantastic elements, like that can be forgiven. But if you're going there and you're going hard line, chinks in your armor will ruin the enjoyment of the whole piece. It's like when people say don't judge a book by its cover. No, and I said this last week. I think if the author didn't care enough to have a good cover, then it's very likely that they didn't care enough to write a good story. And I'm gonna pull up your cover real quick if I can find. There we go. Find an image I can put up on the screen here because you found an excellent cover.
So that was another thing. This is my first comic book, my first Indiegogo campaign, and I wanted to send a message like, no, I'm serious about this. I'm not joking around. And if you
Hmm.
see a Dave Dorman cover, you're like, okay, Dave Dorman's not gonna just do a cover for some guy who's a clown or whatever, and he's doing it. He doesn't want his name attached to just any old dude that's putting something
Yep.
out there, and the inside stinks, and he did no research. So across the
Hmm.
board, getting Dave, Tim, Matt Weldon, and then Brett R. Smith, I was like, okay, they don't know for sure about my writing, but they could at least see that I surrounded myself with very professional men.
Oh yes. Very, very much indeed. It's always great to meet guys like this for all sorts of projects. One of something that might be of interest to you and to our audience is that if you actually want to see a science fiction that handled exorcisms very well, we have Ada Cancri by Russell May, who wrote about a demonic possession within a asteroid colony that a team of special forces and a plucky Orthodox priest must go and take care of the infestations there.
Oh, interesting.
Mysterious. Um, Sadly, he hasn't produced anything else since, which I consider such a disappointment because it was so good.
Yeah, it
I love.
sounds pretty cool.
It's been 3 years. Didn't even realize it. Anyway, Moving on. So working out with it, how did you keep yourself and the other people working with you going over this time period?
That's another thing where I was talking to Tim and Brett, and having this, like I said, this is my first time around on this sort of project, and I was like, with all the other stuff that's going on in everybody else's life right now, all the other things that they're juggling, it's almost like a minor
Mhm.
miracle that any sort of collaborative project like this gets made, because anything can throw it off. It could be maybe somebody's parents are sick, maybe
Mhm.
you have a kid or something, and who knows what, it's just life or whatever. Maybe another project comes up. Maybe you have a creative disagreement with one of your team members and everything implodes because somebody doesn't want to give way, or there's no principled compromise that you could reach, and somebody just walks off the project or whatever. So there's all these
Mhm.
pitfalls, and that was I respect anybody that's made an independent comic like a lot more now than I did beforehand, because yeah, finding ways to keep people, I mean, again, I have a very professional team, so for the most part they're on autopilot in many ways, but yeah, anytime you're on a team, making sure everybody, like, the ball keeps rolling forward, that is very important. I mean, at the end of the day, it's my book, it's my project, and someone like Brett, he's in demand for his talents, and he's got people willing to pay him a lot of money. And so if he's got people pulling him in 10 different directions, I definitely have to be pulling as well. So, but in a a professional way.
Absolutely. And honestly, it shows off in the success that you've had. The GoFundMe campaign, sorry, Indiegogo campaign, my bad, shows that you've gotten $25,200, uh, you, of your thing, and you only were going for a $10,000 fund. How has the success changed you for the better or for the worse?
Well, the one thing about running a campaign like this that I it's almost like a full-time job. And when you have an existing full-time job, and I have my own boss that I have to make sure he's happy, so I stayed employed. Um, it's it's one of these things where it's like, okay, you're going to be burning the candle at both ends for 60 days basically. And every once in a while it'll be like a, I don't know, Saturday night I'll just conk out for an insane number of hours, because during the week you're answering emails. There's international customers that are emailing me. They're not even reflected on the Indiegogo campaign. All the international customers are emailing me at Douglas Ernst at douglasernst.blog, getting back to people, being on live streams like this, then circling back with
Hmm.
people in the comments section. And so it's just almost this never ending race for, the duration of the campaign. You just keep running and running and running. It's a good thing, but in the future I'm going to have to figure out a way to do it more efficiently, as long as I'm working another full-time job, because it's rather exhausting.
Oh yeah. Um, I imagine so. The poor things we put our publishers into. So after this success, what are you going to do after?
So our first the first thing we want to do is make sure that all of our US customers get their books and they're happy. We wanted to deliver on time or early. We are
Ooh.
still on track to do that. Then I'm going to circle back with international customers, take care of them, and then probably this September I'm going to start writing the next story. I might, and then, well, Brett actually, he's on the same page as me, and he was like, I think it would be cool if you actually did a prequel at some point in time, because the mentor in this particular tale is, his name is Reginald Crane. He's a Vietnam veteran. And Brett was like, I would like if you went back and did something like the Nam inspired the 80s comic. And I was like, yeah, no, that's something I'd like to do as well. So now I'm doing some research on Vietnam, and I will probably sometime next year write a prequel book involving the one character, and then I'll start writing the sequel as well, and we'll just see where that goes. With these guys, like I said, you got to get them far in advance. I know Tim's schedule is filling up quite, it's pretty fast here, so if he can't do it, I'm going to have to find another artist. But
Mm.
Tim will always have first crack if he wants it, if he has time, and if not, then we'll see who else is willing to do it. But I want to just keep going with the book. Like I said, this is a self-contained tale. So, but at the end of it, you could see that it's basically this little band of brothers, these three guys, and they understand that there's plenty of evil out there for them to take on, and
Hmm.
we just kind of go from there.
And it's absolutely fantastic. I like the look of it. I like every part of it. And your success and demeanor is seriously what it needs to be for projects like this. Um, Admittedly, I'm very much willing to be passive, willing to wait and see with the comic books industry. But honestly, if this is the stuff we have to look forward to, it's in very good hands indeed. So you've got a whole cast of characters. Let's talk more about the story for now. So you got a cast of characters, and we've already talked about our hero, a priest and former Vietnam vet, who's going after it, and he's teaming up with some other people. Why don't we talk about them?
Sure. So, like I said, the main character is Father Patrick Redder. He's an Iraq, Afghanistan veteran. Father Reginald Crane, Vietnam veteran. And then the third character is he's a cop. His name is we refer to as Officer Gregory Chua. And it starts off basically the cops come to Father Redder when they have a crime or a series of crimes that they believe there's a supernatural element attached to them, but they kind of want to keep it under the radar. It's not something they want in the papers that they're actually considering the supernatural. So that's how they essentially started reaching out to Father Redder. And Officer Chua he's basically the one that says, "Hey, got these files. There's a series of deaths and all of them appear connected in some, it's kind of, it's not as bad as a Murder She Wrote where it's like a town of 50 people and every week there's like a new murder or whatever, but it's a smallish sort of town. And so they're like, all these murders are seemingly connected. Can you see if there's something connected to black masses, the occult or whatever? And so that's where Father Redder comes in, and these guys sort of have their own little team initially. But like I said, after it's obvious, everything is tied to these matches. So when you strike this match, you're essentially taken to a spiritual realm. You're on the demon's turf, and the demons essentially, they will exploit your deepest, darkest fears, anxieties, regrets. So for Patrick Redder, for instance, if he strikes the match, he's going to be taken back to Iraq or Afghanistan. He's going to be taken to the moment where he was injured. If you're a Vietnam veteran, they're going to take you back to Vietnam. So whatever like I said, your anxieties or fears are, that is where they're going to psychologically and spiritually bring you. And so, like I said, they're in over their head. They're like, whoa, this is beyond our pay grade, essentially. And that's where Father Reginald Crane comes in.
And that's a pretty intense idea. Uh, I can only imagine what could be brought up for me and for other people as well. You open it up and it's the childhood trauma, or it's your, sexual desire, or it's some hatred you have brought to the forefront, and those type of things, those things that we're weak on, can make it very easy for a demon to do their work, I think.
Right. And so that was actually one of the questions was, okay, well, how are these guys any different from any other exorcist? Why is there a major order needed? And essentially, so in a normal exorcism, the priest essentially, especially once they know the demon's name, the priest essentially relies on Christ, and so there's almost really no reason for the priest to be scared in any way, because if
Hmm.
their faith is sound, it's like they're relying on Christ to exorcise this demon from the person. So with this particular, with these matches and bringing in this realm, is essentially bringing them back to their weakest points psychologically and spiritually, to try and sort of push a wedge between themselves and their faith. So if you were a demon and you wanted to take a Soulfinder off the table, that's like you said, there's a childhood trauma. Your parents died somehow in the, Father Redder's father was a cop, and I don't want to give away too much or whatever, but again, every single childhood trauma, they're going to bring you back there, and they're going to try and convince you that your faith is in vain. Maybe God actually hates you, or whatever, or maybe God doesn't really exist, or etc. etc.
Mm.
etc. And so that's what they're going to try and do. And a normal priest during an exorcism isn't going to have this sort of their deepest, darkest fears vivified for them.
And that's as terrifying as I described earlier. Of course, though, for some of them, it's an opportunity for great heroism, to push on despite it. God's not going to help you, God's not going to save you. And it's like, oh, well, I'm still going to push on then, and we'll see what happens. Yeah,
You
there's,
sound like the reader that I'm after, who's going to dig a little deeper. So yeah, the greater the challenge that God allows, that God permits to happen, that's actually an opportunity to, like you said, become an even bigger hero, to take on more responsibility, and to show the world that no, you're actually the one who can take that weight on your shoulders.
hmm and honestly, that's a very superversive idea. I love it down to its core. I have been doing busy, while you've been chatting away with me, and I've become your 700th Soulfinder supporter with a nice little clergy bundle,
Oh,
uh,
awesome.
which will look great on the shelf, which is important to me. I'll put it next to Chicago Typewriter, probably. I'm a big supporter of buying things to support authors. Many times I see authors as like, can I get a review copy or something like that? It's like, just like, the book's like 2.99 on Kindle, man. Just, like, do a little thing and bump yourself in the rankings, even just a little bit, so that perhaps that mythical algorithm, that strange and heathen god, will support you and give you, whatever it is you need to, get that bestseller position. Even though, you're on Indiegogo, there's a lot of things out there. Um, which may or may not, determine your success, whether you show up, whether you're chosen by the gods. Um, and it's like you earlier in the conversation, you just have to spend a lot of time on it.
Yeah, and
Uh,
I mean, that actually gets into the psychology of, like, there were people, they will just at random markers, they'll say like, well, I wasn't gonna back, but then when I saw that you hit 7,000, I decided to back, or whatever. And it's like,
right.
people seem to like those nice round numbers. If you just hit like 10,000, okay, I wasn't gonna back, but I saw you hit 10,000, so okay, now I will back. Or I saw you hit 20,000. Now I will come in. So there's all this sort of like arbitrary decisions, but at the same time, I could kind of see, I don't know, there's a certain percentage where they're like, oh, it's okay to back this book, or this seems
Yeah.
like it might be popular, so now I'll jump on board. And it's like, I don't want to denigrate any customers, but at the same time, I'm like,
Ah.
you acknowledge that it looked really cool, and you liked the art, and you liked the premise, you liked the concept, but you were going to wait until I hit $11,000. Like, I'm just
Mm.
like, okay, that's interesting. But so yeah, all these kind of things are really interesting to find out on my first go run on a crowdfunded campaign.
Well, I was talking to Brian Niemeyer on one of these streams, and he said everyone loves a winner, and that's unless you're an absolute heel, I guess. Uh, and that's absolutely true. The higher things get in the ranks, the more things people wanna buy them. It's like when things of, quite frankly, mediocre to poor quality, like the Hunger Games and stuff like that. When they catch that zeitgeist, when they do just the right things, even though it's not really the best example of a battle royale from the West. When you get celestial horror, and then there's still William Hope Hodgson tooling around there. Don't mind me. Um, it's everyone loves a winner. There's no better way to say it.
Yeah, and that was something that I mean, you always hear the same, you know it kind of, but you don't really know it until you're actually seeing the numbers come in, you're getting feedback, you're
Hmm.
getting emails from people, and they're just like I said, they were like, "Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was gonna back it, but then you hit 10,000." I was like, "Okay, I'm in." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, thanks."
I was planning on backing this anyway, but the reason why I did it right this second rather than waiting for next payday, not that I'm in any sort of financial issue more than usual, um, is that like the 700 opportunity? It's like, ooh, I gotta grip this. This is excellent material. I am the 700th one, and there's no others. But then again, I'm kind of petty like that.
No,
Uh,
I'm the same way. If there's a campaign and you could, be the guy that I was on a stream yesterday, and the one guy was the one who knocked us over 25,000. And like if I went to the page and it looked pretty good, and I could be the guy that puts it over 25,000 for, again, it's sort of irrational, but not at the same time. You're just like,
right.
ooh, I could be the guy that puts him over that 25,000 mark. Okay,
Ooh,
or
ooh, look at
whatever.
this. So let's talk a little bit about inspirations. What sort of things have inspired you in working on this project?
That's where, so again, it's definitely informed by my faith for sure. That's like I said, when I was like, okay, I got to come up with a good versus evil. What's I don't want to say easiest way, but I want to make sure there's no mistake that the bad guys are evil. And so that's where the demons from hell came in. And I have a military past. In the 90s, I was in the military. And then I had friends who had stayed in, and especially after 9/11 and everything that happened with all that. And so I don't know. The military has always been a big part of my life. My dad was a military guy as well, and so there's that element. So my faith, my military past, and then my love of comics in general. And then I've said before that this particular story is almost like a culmination of over or roughly a decade of just being really ticked off at the comic book industry and them not
Hmm.
giving me the stories that I want. So this campaign and the book and the story and the art, I almost wanted to say like, okay, this is how you do it. This is what I expect. And I don't know how people will receive the book, but I know that I tried my best to give people a solid story with solid artwork and the customer service. I'm trying my best to live up to the ideals I've preached about for like a decade, getting the book out to people on time. The physical book itself with the square binding and the paper stock and the ink where you all that kind of stuff. I just want to have it be like, maybe not the gold standard. I mean, I would like that, but Doug TenNapel, actually, his book is a hardcover, so we don't have the cash for that yet. But
Mm,
aside from the hardbound book, I would like our book and the campaign to sort of be something where anybody in this independent comics movement could slap it down on the table of an industry pro and say like, I dare you to say that this isn't good. And that this particular movement is, I see critics on social media like, yeah, this is a clown show, or clown car of people that want to get into comics or whatever. And so I wanted to give people a book where they could say, no, read this, and I dare you to say that this is clown carish, because it's not.
mm. I don't understand the clown car thing when it comes to these sort of projects, especially since everyone's always working on it. It's just now that we're independent of the Mickey Stranglehold. Um, I mean, there's honk honk, when you hear something ridiculous, like a movie about female Thor. That's like, the clown's just sort of dancing in my head because the medication's wearing off. But it's like, no, 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 I'm joking. But about the medication. Um, but it's a lot of, there's a difference between projects like yours and Johnny Come Latelys. If I might divert for a second, I remember the webcomic boom, I want to say 15 years ago. Everyone wanted to do a web comic. I worked on a web comic. I actually got the first couple pages, first page and something done. Then the guy and I disagreed about project because neither of us had any idea on how to do a web comic, and we separated. But then that's the stuff that nobody saw but us. And yeah, I'm not going to say it was bad, but then it's like the things that you do see that make it out there, and it's like, hmm, probably should have let that bake in the oven another year. And it like there's a difference. Like John De La Rosa's comics are fantastic. Your comic looks absolutely very fine. I see comic books and I see artists and I see a whole bunch of stuff all over the place. And to me, like at least in my circles, because I do try to encircle myself with people of quality, uh, it's you can't describe it like that. That person has no good taste. It's like saying, well, the female Thor comic book had good art. Okay, the art was entirely passable for something of Marvel quality, but it didn't have anything else. Uh, Looking at the art, like there's a difference between the cover and looking at, um, which must have that certain quality to make you want to buy the book, and looking at the insides that lie between the cover and the back.
Yeah, and it's just been one of these frustrating things to see people, and some of them you could tell like deep down they know that they're just lying or whatever, but some of these industry guys where if you look at what wins awards, like the awards to me are a joke these days because it's
Yep.
like I think that even like America Chavez, Entertainment Weekly, I think
Oh.
actually did up a thing on that particular book, and it was horrible across the board. It was
Yep.
just bad. And it's like, okay, Entertainment Weekly saying it's like one of the best comics of the year or whatever. And then these other books that are just mediocre getting all sorts of lucite blocks or whatever they hand out. Meanwhile, there's these independent books that I think just
Hmm.
look head and shoulders better. And they're just like, yeah, right. It's not Marvel. And I was like, I wouldn't want
Right.
to be Marvel these days.
Like I supported the alt hero campaign. I bought their Chicago typewriter. I don't know, and I did. Let's be real. I'm not a comic guy. It's kind of a hard medium for me to enjoy. Uh, but even their quality is just outstanding. Head and shoulders above it. There's John De La Rosa's Flying Sparks, which is similarly funded on GoFundMe or Indiegogo or whatever. I can't remember. And so on and so forth. They're just better. Admittedly, the comic I am excited for is Dynamite Thor, the hero whose special power is not being blown up by the dynamite he throws. Um, but it's it's quite funny. And I'm also looking forward to this now that I know of its existence and that we have spoken, together. Honestly, the personal connection makes it better every time. It's why people want their books signed on site by the authors that they sell them to.
Yeah, it's one of the cool things about even though YouTube has its issues and Twitter and all these kind of different platforms, you're able to get that one-on-one sort of meeting with customers and potential
Hmm.
customers that you could not get years ago. And it's like a double-edged sword because if you're a jerk, you're going to drive people away. But if you're remotely like tactful and you have a little bit of finesse and when people disagree with you, you could win over. There are people a year ago. I said this on Twitter that hated my guts, and then now they're like, okay, well, you basically won me over. I tried to basically be a jerk to you and hate you and insult you, and you didn't take the bait. And so now I'm backing Soulfinder. And it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, if you know how to deal with the customers and you give them the old fashioned good customer service, you will get backers.
Yep, and it's like people like, yeah, well, X author or X writer was or artist was kind of a jerk, and it's like, yeah, but they weren't a jerk while they were begging for slots on a publisher's, docket. Build it up first, and then maybe you can think about getting an attitude. Um, I was born with my attitude, and that's the important thing. Uh, so with no, I do customer service all day. I know exactly how it is. Uh, so with the campaign, what next? So we've hit a few milestones. What's the next milestone you're aiming for?
So, I mean, when it comes to the funding, I'm just like I said, I wasn't expecting anything along the lines of 25,000. I wasn't sure where we would
Hmm.
go. Tim was saying like, I think we should be able to hit 20,000. That seems reasonable. Um, but 25,000 was awesome. We still have something like 26 days to go.
Mm.
So I don't know where we'll go. If we'll hit 30, 35,000, that would be nice. But really, I'm just concerned about making sure that I get the book out on time and early, and making sure that those customers, like when they receive their books, it's in great condition. And if they have any issues, taking them off the table, making sure that they're happy. So it's really at this point in time, because we're already funded, it's going to come out. The artwork was done in early June. The script was done it basically in October. It's really in Brett's hands right now, and we're on track. So the only real milestone is having people get the books and then having an overwhelming response where like, dude, this guy delivered. He did exactly what he said he was going to do. That's outstanding.
Oh yes. Last week we were just talking about that very thing, where it's the struggle to fulfill all those orders. But it looks to my eye anyway that you've had a very what's the wording I want? You have a very reachable goal. The giant, $400 or whatever things that people want to get, as well as the individual packets are not complex. You don't have to put together 50 different things. Um, to get these out to people, like at every part of this, your strategies have been quite excellent, I believe, with this crowdfunding
what
campaign.
we So one of my things with Tim and on his My Hero Macadamia 2 book, that was like a test run. I said, listen, I want to get the price point as low as possible for people, because one of the complaints has been these campaigns, it's like a minimum of $25 and then adding shipping to that. And so you end up spending like $30 for a book. And I was like, we need to get it as low as possible. And so
Mm.
Tim crunched the numbers and he's like, okay, we could do $15. And again, it's a 64-page book when you include the bonus material, 56 pages for the story. So I was like, okay, $15 for Dave Dorman, Matt Weldon, Timothy Lim, Brett R. Smith coloring. I think that's a good deal. And we didn't want to have these bells and whistles. And it basically, I've likened it to a music show. There are bands that put on all sorts of pyrotechnics and laser shows, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to strip it down and have it be about the story and the art first and foremost, and then getting the delivery out. I didn't want, again, nothing against variant covers or anything along those lines, but the more that we promised, I wanted to under promise and over deliver. I didn't want to
Mm.
over promise and under deliver. And
Which
one of
feels so bad as a customer.
yeah, I actually had one of my patrons today was like, she just signed up and she's like, well, do you have coins? Do you have t-shirts? Do you have this? And I was like, we'll get to that. But for
Yeah.
this campaign, I really just wanted to say, okay, I have a really solid comic book for you, and I will get it to you on time, and I will address any needs you have in a timely and efficient manner. And then we will get to t-shirts and coins or whatever the heck, salt and pepper shakers or whatever the heck, mugs. That'll be down the line. But I want to just make sure I have a quality comic book in your hands first.
And that's the most important thing, because then if you have that quality comic book, they're like, I want some more merch. I want that cover on a t-shirt. I want to wear this t-shirt to the gym. I'm gonna work out, or whatever's the customer's fancy. Ah, well, it sounds like you've got a great head on your shoulders, and it feels really like a masterclass on how to really perform a GoFundMe. Did you did I ask about what the next perk unlock is going to be, or um, did I
We're
not?
we're basically we're basically done with any sort of like perks or whatever.
Mm,
That was the other thing. People were just like, "Oh, we're going to have new sort of like variant covers and all this sort of stuff," and I was like, "No." At this point in time, we're just where we're at, and it, I suppose we could come out with another piece of original artwork if Matt Weldon wanted to do another one within the next 20 something days, I would gladly accept that. But for the most
mm.
part, anything we quote unquote unlock, it'll just be to show people like, hey, this is the kind of quality that you're paying for. But they've already gone above and beyond our initial expectations. And so yeah, we're good to go on the perks.
Oh yeah. And I was just curious because I was just looking at the updates, and it said something about a square bound book, which is like this. You said here, this is type of binding ensures the best quality format outside of a hardback book,
Right.
making it perfect for shelf display, which is very important for me. A book that doesn't look good on the shelf, no, thank you. That goes on to the, I hide it under the futon pile or something. I don't know. So we've been talking for about an hour. How about you give us some final words, sir?
Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone, including John Della Rose, for tuning in as well. But like I said, if people are looking for solid storytelling, solid art, and they want to read about combat veterans turned exorcists battling demons, then I have a comic book for them in Soulfinder Demons Match.
And I certainly agree with your statement. I have yet to bring on anyone on this chat who I believe will not meet whatever I'm plugging for them. At a sufficient level of quality, excitement, and hopefully something you've never seen before. Thank you very much for joining me, Douglas. I'm going to, and to everyone who joined me, even briefly, have a wonderful evening, and catch me next week where I will be chatting with Ben Stevens on his Goddess Gambit series that recently produced a sequel. Oh boy! That was way too high pitched for what I was intending. I am so sorry. Anyway, have a good one.